Well, welcome back. Got a 2004 Toyota Sienna. Driver's side brake, front brake started making noise. I'll show you a little bit of that and what was causing that, but it needs front brakes. We're going to do front brakes in this Toyota Sienna. I've obviously taken the wheel off here, so 14 millimeter for the slide bolts. We're going to take them out. 17 millimeter for the bracket to the knuckle for the caliper mounting bracket. First, I'm going to try to push this piston in a little bit. Stick a screwdriver in here and just kind of pry out on it a little bit. Gives me some wiggle room with that. Push the piston back. Oh, man, I can't even talk. Gives me a little bit of wiggle room. Makes it a little looser on the rotor, so I can get that off of there easier. As I said, 14 millimeter for these slide bolts. Do them. Just set this up top. I have to get something to hang that off of. I just need to set that up out of the way for a second. I'm going to come in behind here, right here, up here, and then down here, 17 millimeter. I turn my wheel slightly. I'm done with 17 millimeter. Let go. Let go. Take this off here. Take my rotor off. Done with that. I'm going to clean this face of this hub up. Just, Scotch-Brite, cookie wheel, sandpaper, get all the corrosion off of it. Then I'm going to lightly grease this. It just keeps the rotor from sticking to the hub. It generally will stick right around this flange here, is where they tend to get hung up. This one wasn't bad at all. I've had this off before, so these pads are getting close. They're getting pretty close. Hopefully you can see that. So we're going to change them. Move my light a little bit. Oh, let go. There. You can look at these. Look how cracked they are. See the crack in that? That's really bad. That's heat usually that does that. Now I don't know what both of them are like that too. I don't know what brand these are or anything. I didn't do them. I've had this car for probably a year, and I haven't done the brakes. This is the first that I'm going to do them. New hardware. Always replace the hardware. Always. Check these slide pins. The problem I had with the other side was a slide pin. The boot had a hole in it, and the slide pin's all rusted up. I'll show you that in a little bit when we go to work on these, but I just want to clean these up for now, do what I need to do here, and then we'll go over to the bench and work on that. So I'm going to come in here. Let me tilt you up just a little. See if I can tilt you up. There we go. Move you in and get you a closer look. I'm going to clean this out. Basically, most of this just road grime in here. Just clean it up. Now, what I want to do is I want to clean the face of this piston, any corrosion, and I want to clean the back of these tabs and clean them off. So let me go get. These are not too bad. Let me go get a piece of emery cloth. Now you can use, I have cookie wheel. I can do this with a cookie wheel as well, but Scotch-Brite, emery cloth. I'm just going to do this with emery cloth first. Just going to come in here. Okay, face of the piston here, if I push it back in. I like to clean it before I push the piston back in, so you don't have to worry about damaging the boot. Don't want to damage the boot. Let me get some brake clean. Brake clean, chemical 1001 uses. I'm going to clean this off. Clean the hub while we're here too. Just spray that down, let that dry. Tip it down a little bit here so you can see what I'm doing. So there's the hub. So I want to do the same thing down here. I want to make sure I come in here and I'm going to just, this is not too bad. I'm going to come in here and clean this. Like I said, you can use sandpaper, emery cloth, Scotch-Brite, whatever you have. Just take the corrosion off of it, clean it up. Pay attention to right in the corner around this flange because that's usually the worst part, usually. Not always, but... This is high temp grease. You can use brake grease for this as well. I have high temp grease here, just wheel and bearing grease. Thin coat. You're just trying to keep moisture off of this and corrosion from starting. That's all you're doing. Just makes it a lot easier for the next person who has to come in here so the rotor doesn't stick to the face of the hub here. Okay. I just use one of the old pads, stick the pad in there. You can use a pair of vice grips, a big pair of channel locks, if you have a big pair enough, big enough, a C-clamp. I just have this little tool. Just going to turn it in here. Get my light again. I'll get you better light here. Come on. You're giving me grief here. Really? Come on. Stop it. That went well, didn't it? Yeah, not so much. Oh, give me a spot. There we go. I don't even know if that's helping, but maybe. So I'm just going to push this back in. You might want to check your master cylinder. If it's full up to the top, you may want to take a little bit out of the master cylinder so you don't overflow it before you push this back. Mine's got plenty of room, so not real worried about that. These should go in pretty easy when you turn it in. If it's not, you may have a clogged line here, or you may have a piston that's hanging up. This one's going in easy with no problem. And you'll feel it bottom out. Just push it all the way in. Kind of let you see. Hopefully you can see. That's it. Back that out. You want to check your dust boot. Sometimes your dust boot will get deformed because air gets trapped in it around the boot. And what you want to do is take I just have a regular screwdriver, but take a real small screwdriver or a little small pick. Don't poke a hole in the dust boot, but slide in right against the metal piston and get down to the seal and just kind of pry out, and it'll kind of burp the seal and let the air out, and it'll collapse back to where it's supposed to be. This one is fine. It's not sticking out anywhere, so I don't need to do anything to it. Let me get some brake grease and we'll grease this up. Back of the tabs, where it rides against the outside of the pad. This side rides against the outside of the outside pad, and the piston rides against the outside of the inside pad, the backing of it. Just a little bit on there. Needs to be brake grease, has to be able to handle the temperature. Okay. Face of the piston here. Hopefully you can see this, what I'm doing. Turn a little more maybe for you. Get it on the face of the piston. Once again, you're keeping moisture out of there, keeping corrosion from starting. Where I am, that's your #1 enemy. So that's pretty much ready to go. We'll just set that up there. Alright, so I've got my mounting bracket and pins. Now, this pin, you see, has a collar on it, and it's rusted very badly. So I'm not even going to try. Normally, if this was just not too bad, I'd clean this up on a wire wheel, re-grease it, and reuse it. But the other one's even worse from the other side, which I put somewhere. It's right here. Even worse. I had to get a slide pin kit for both sides because one has a collar, one doesn't. They're different. So I have that kit. I have new slide pins. If you don't need new slide pins, what you want to do is make sure if there's any corrosion on this, clean it up. Get it off of there before you re-grease it. So we're going to replace these boots. This one's already torn. The other side was torn even worse. These have a metal plate on them. They're a little bit of a pain to get off and back on. Let me get a screwdriver and I'll show you how I get them off. Here's the new one. You can see there's a metal collar that you have to get out of here. So let me pull this other pin. This one's not too bad, but I'm replacing both the pins anyway, so it doesn't really matter. They're getting thrown out. So what I want to do is I want to get in here where I can get at this collar, which is going to be hard to show you, but maybe you can see what I'm doing. I'm just going to try to knock this out. I might have to take this over to my vise to get it out of here, but I want to get down behind that metal piece and get in there, separate it. Let me go take this to the vise. But you can see all I have to do is I have to get in here, basically behind this metal piece, get it broken loose, and then pop it out of there. And I'll show you once I get it out. Let me go over to the vise and do that. I just took that over. Oh, get in front of the camera there, you can see it. So just kind of got the screwdriver here into the side of it, hit it with the hammer, popped it out. You make sure you clean these out. This one's got a little bit of rust in it. So I have a brush on a drill. The gun cleaning brush works good. Nylon brush, whatever you have. I try to find a drill bit that'll just fit in there, and I use that initially. You can hear it. I'm just going in there and cleaning any of the corrosion off the sides as much as I can. This other one's not corroded, still has grease in it. This one has virtually no grease in it, so that's why it's corroded. Now I'll just use the brush. I'll go in there with the brush. Clean it out really good. And then I'll go spray it down with brake clean, clean it out. Alright, so I've got to put these new casts in, but before I do that, I'm going to come in here. We want to clean any corrosion off where the hardware sits, down in here. I need a file. If it's real light, I'm going to file this and then I'm going to wire wheel it. If it's heavier corrosion, wire wheel won't take it off. You have to actually get the heavier stuff with a file. So I'm just going to come in here on both ends of this, file it, clean it up. Alright, all cleaned up. Well, it looks happy. Nice and clean in there. Now time for hardware. So always a big controversy. Some people grease on top of the slide hardware. I don't. I grease behind it. Simply because hardware is stainless steel. It doesn't rust. The only thing you're doing is you're coating this with grease, with brake grease behind where the hardware goes to keep moisture out of there and keep corrosion from starting. What tends to happen is the hardware sits in here, pad sits in here, and if there's corrosion behind the hardware, it goes like this. It pinches it. Pinches the hardware, and it pinches the pad, and then the pad can't slide in and out like it's supposed to, and then you have problems. So you're just trying to keep corrosion out of there. That's all it is. Before I do that, I want to put my my new boots back on. I'm going to put a little bit of grease. I don't use the same grease in there. I use brake grease, but it's a different type. It's right here. This is what I use for wherever it's touching the rubber, basically. Slide pins, things like that. We're going to put a little grease down in here. That's a little too much. You don't want a ton. I just want to get a little bit in there. You put too much in here, it'll lock up. It'll just like a hydraulic lock on it. it's easy to kind of put some in there before the boots are on. Just going to put a little bit in there. We'll put some on the pins as well. All right, pins, or boots, I should say. So these are metal. Like I said before, you have to go like this. What you need to do is find the right size socket. You don't want to pinch the rubber. You want to make sure the rubber goes up in there without getting pinched, but it hits on the metal. These can be a pain sometimes, this type. Put them in there, and then you want to drive them in, basically. So I'm going to attempt to show this, and we'll see how it goes. Sometimes it doesn't go well, but we'll see. We'll see how it goes. Oh, not too bad. Not too bad. Go a little more, I think. You don't want to pinch that rubber. There's one. Go to the other end. Put them on there, turn the socket a little bit instead of just trying to push it. And a lot of times we'll get it past that rubber boot. Make it a little easier on yourself. There you can see, flush on both ends, they're in there. So, one pin has that collar. Let me get my new pins, which I have. I had to go buy them. Should have said this in the beginning. Keep that one that has the collar. Needs to go back in the end it came out of. I know which one it is on this because there's a mark on the bracket, and it was away from the mark. It wasn't on the one with the mark. So wherever it came out, put it back in the same hole. So a little bit of grease, not a ton. Just get it coated. I already have some in there, so I don't need a lot more. Make sure you get some up in the top around where the boot's going to grab it. That's where the moisture gets in. You want to get some in there. All right. Slide it in. See, these can be a pain with the ones with the collars. Can be tough to get in sometimes. That's not too bad. Now, you're going to push it down. Make sure the boot grabs that groove right underneath the head of the bolt. That's got it. So there's usually a little bit of air in there. So push it in and try to burp it. I got gloves on, so it's kind of hard to do with my finger. But I'm just going to take a screwdriver and kind of pry on it a little bit and get any air out of it. It should stay flat like that. It shouldn't be out like that. If it's out like that, it means it has air in it. Should be able to push that in, it pretty much stays in. Same thing with the other one. A little bit of grease. If I had a brain, I'd do the other end first. Around there. Trying to keep it in the camera, keep forgetting. Lifting it up, probably taking it out of your view. Making a mess. A little bit of grease, not too much. Same thing. Push it in. So you can see how much that one is out compared to that one, which is in. So I've got to burp it. Push it in. I don't know if you could hear that or not. Oh, still has some in there. Gotta get some more out. Can be a little difficult sometimes, but give me grief. You got to get the air out of it. Come on, really? You're gonna do that? Yeah. Let me get a pick. Let me get a pick. Don't poke a hole in it. Come on, let go. Oh, it's been a pain. Let's go down with this. Come here. Come on. That's better. That's definitely better than it was. Still like to get a little more out of there if I can. There we go. That's much better. So get the air out as much as you can for there. So now we do the hardware. So I use this, like I said before, I use a different grease for anywhere that's metal to metal. I just like it better until I run out of it. When I run out, I'll just use the same grease everywhere. But since I have both, and I kind of like this a little better for metal to metal, it's just the consistency of it's a little stickier, a little thicker, I think. So I use that. But you can just use any brake grease. Thin coat in behind where the hardware goes. Both ends. Okay. New hardware. One in there. Let me get my pads. We'll put my pads on. This is what I use. Hopefully you can read that. Asbestos element 3, fully coated rotors for here. I just find that with the corrosion problems we have in this area, fully coated rotor tends to last longer. Set these in here. Should go in there pretty easy. Should be able to move them once you get them in there. Move them in place here. Should stay put. When I'm out as far as I can get them right now, so they go over the rotor easier. I'm just fighting with them. Amateur hour, like I've never done this. Here we go. Alright, so they're ready to go back on the car. All new pads, greased up, new hardware, new slide pins in this case, and boots because they were needed. There's the part number for the rotors. Asbestos element 3. Fully coated rotor, as I mentioned before. Just what I like. I've had good luck with them. Very few issues, really no issues with them. That's what I use. Put the rotor on here. We're going to put a lug nut on here temporarily, just to hold it in place and keep it tight. Okay, my bracket here, 2 of my bolts. We will put a little thread locker and I have to torque these. I have to look up the torque specs. I'm gonna tighten them up for now, and then I'll come back and I'll go torque them. They have a torque spec. I just don't know what it is off the top of my head, but I'll come back and do that. Slide it on. My bolts started. Ah, I knew that would happen. knocked right off of there. I hate that. I hate when that happens. Where's my bolt hole? There it is. Alright, let me get my other bolt, which I knocked right under the camera. Reach around without knocking the camera all over the place. Get that started. I'm going to put these in with my smaller gun because I need to torque them, so I'm just going to snug them up. Alright. Put my pad back in that came out here. Probably be a good idea to do that. Squeeze them in against the rotor. Now let's put one of my bolts here. Don't twist your brake line up when you put this back on. I know you're right at the top of the screen here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put my top bolt in right here so I can just pivot it. I just got grease all over my gloves, but I'm just going to stick it in here. Just like that. Stick it in, start it, and I can just rotate this down. Make sure your brake line, this flexible brake line right here, is not twisted up. Another one. And I'll start these in. Use my small gun for these two. And yes, I turn my gun down so I don't hammer things. These just need to be snugged up. Really. Not that tight. Probably 20, something around there, but okay. If they spin, sometimes they'll spin in here. This back, let me get my light here where you can see. Sometimes they'll spin right here. They'll spin this whole pin. This got a hex head on it, so you get a wrench on it, hold it while you tighten this up if they do that. This should move in and out like this pretty easily, which it does. I gotta go look up my torque spec for those bolts for that mount the bracket to the knuckle, and I'll torque them down. Obviously, we'll put my wheel back on, torque that down, torque the lug nuts down. One thing I will tell you is you have a lot of play in here because you push that piston back in. Before you drive this, pump the brake pedal till it gets firm or you get a scary moment. I'm gonna go out and bed these pads, which means I'm gonna go out and I'm gonna drive this up to 40, 60 miles an hour. Pretty aggressively slow it down, not coming to a complete stop, maybe 10, 15 miles an hour. I'm going to repeat that a couple times, then drive it a little bit, let it cool off, and just repeat that cycle maybe 8, 10 times. Let the pads bed to the rotor so they work like they're supposed to. Don't laugh. She's standing over there laughing at me. That's it for the 2004 Toyota Sienna. Front brakes, rotors, and pads. Had to do slide pins and boot kit as well. I had one torn boot. One from either side. I showed them before, but they're so bad that they're not worth trying to reuse. If they were just a little bit corroded, then clean them up and reuse them. But you know, basic things. Clean behind the hardware, grease behind the hardware, new hardware always. And good quality parts. Not a very hard job. If they need to do this for your 2004, and I'm sure it's other years as well, Toyota Sienna, I hope it helps you out. If you like the videos, subscribe below. Thanks for watching. Now you can laugh.